Hello, my name is Michael Santos, and I know a lot of the people who are watching this video wonder why I am doing so much work to help people in prison. The answer, of course, is because I served 26 years in federal prison, and I really feel a connection with any individual who was in prison and also with the staff members who work so hard to try and help those people come back successfully. And with this video, I really want to send my gratitude to Mr. Calvin Noel. He is a leader at the Centinela Desert Institute at the Centinela State Prison, and along with his colleague, Dr. Jeremy Nichols, I have the opportunity to present these messages to people who are inside of the state prison at the Centinela. It's called the Centinela State Prison. And what I asked them to do is to invite the individuals who are serving time there to ask me questions. And I would respond to these questions with hope of letting them know how important the decisions that they are making today, how those decisions will influence what they become tomorrow. So I have my little PowerPoint here so I can see their questions on the screen that is behind this video, because I'm absolutely committed to responding to any questions that the men in prison have asked me. I know that in my case it was the decisions that I made inside that made all the difference in the world for me to come back to society successfully, with my dignity intact, with opportunities, and I really feel passionately about wanting to share that same information to men inside. So let's get started with the first question. And that first question asks me, what road did I take in order to make me the man that I am today? And they asked me to be real. Were the opportunities always open to me? Well, that's a great question. And I can tell you that I was very fortunate that I started in the prison journey with this mindset that I was going to change my life. I went in as a young man making a series of really bad decisions that resulted in me getting sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. But when I went in there was only one thing that I wanted, and that was to get out of prison. It wasn't until I started reading leaders that my mindset began to shift. And I began to see, what can I do today with the resources that are around me to begin preparing myself for the man that I wanted to become. So to be real, to answer this question, to be real, the opportunities were not always open to me because I was in prison embarking upon a prison term that would keep me locked up for 9,500 days. I'm going to have to be in here for 26 years, and it's going to be really important that I use every single day, 9,500 days, to prepare so that I could become the man that I wanted to become. Because when I went in there, I certainly didn't have many opportunities, and I didn't have any way of influencing the time that I would get out of prison. But if I worked really hard, if I educated myself, if I focused on books that I could read, if I strove to build a strong support system, then I truly believe that I could become something more. And that's what I would encourage you to do as well. Don't think about where you are right now. Don't think about the challenges that you're facing, but rather think about the best possible outcome that you can create for yourself. And then figure out, okay, what can I do to take me from where I am to where I want to be? If I really know what I want, that's going to influence the way that I talk. And if I want to influence the way that I talk, I've got to read more. I've got to write more. I've got to develop skills that are going to help me become more successful. That is the secret that worked for me, and that is what helped me to become the person that I am today. When I went into the prison system, people really wanted me to stay in prison for the rest of my life. I served 26 years, but I've come back as the man that I wanted to become, and that is not the person that I was when I walked in. And that's going to lead me to question number 2. When did you realize that you had many opportunities while in prison, and how were you able to take advantage of these opportunities? Again, that takes me back to the very beginning of my journey. Not when I was arrested, because when I was arrested, I was not yet ready to begin changing my mindset. I didn't start changing my mindset until I started to read about people who had gone through struggle. And as I read about those individuals, I realized I knew how I wanted to come home. I know that a lot of people in prison get caught up in this mindset that says the best way to serve time is to forget about the world outside and to focus on your life inside. But I knew that I didn't like being in prison, and I knew that I didn't want to be one of these statistics that shows 7 or 8 out of every 10 people who have been locked up end up going back into the prison system again. I knew that I wanted to come back to society with opportunities that I could use to build my business. I wanted to come back to society, be able to put on a suit and tie, and nobody would know that I served a day in prison unless I told them. That was the mindset, and I've been out of jail now for a little over 5 years, and I can honestly say that it was the decisions that I made at the very early part of my journey that put me on this pathway that would open new opportunities. I knew it after I read the story about Socrates, but then I read more stories of people who went through prison and transformed their life. And some of them went through prison, their lives were already really successful, like Nelson Mandela or Mahatma Gandhi. Both of them were lawyers before they went in the prison system. Same with Dr. Martin Luther King, was a well-educated preacher, a doctor of ministry, I think. And, you know, they went into the prison system, but they did not let the prison system define them. And that was what was really, really important to me. Oh no, I just dropped my PowerPoint, so I'm not going to be able to see the questions as quickly as I wanted. In any event, I can say that it was at the very beginning of my journey that I made a decision to transform my life, and that influenced the books that I read. It influenced the confidence that I had to be able to write to universities and persuade universities to admit me into school. It persuaded me to build a support network, eventually finding publishers that would bring my books and my work to market, and that allowed me to build a stronger support network as well. So it was all part of a methodical, deliberate plan that got me through 9,500 days in prison, and then also allowed me to begin building my life when I came home as well. So I'm still using the same strategies and tactics that got me through prison, and that is allowing me to build my business out here right now. And I'm going to try and use some of my editing skills here to show you my business. I want to show you the website that I am creating. I want to show you some of the properties that I am developing in Costa Rica and Belize and here in California as well. All of those business opportunities opened because of the decisions that I made while I was in prison. And that's why I feel so strongly that you should be thinking about what books do you read? What types of people are you associating with? How are you developing your mindset to take advantage of these opportunities? How can you tap into the wisdom of Mr. Noel or Mr. Nichols or some of the other teachers that are there with you in prison that want to help you succeed? I found that although there's a lot of negativity in prison, there's also a lot of positivity in prison by tapping into the wisdom of the people who work there. And that's what I would encourage you to do as well. Tap into the wisdom of the staff members who want to help you, and just kind of tune out and reject the negativity that exists in so many prisons today. I'm going to have to pause to push this button because I dropped my PowerPoint and I can't see the next question. Number 3 is, what choices did you have to make in order to change and become the man you are today? That sounds similar to one of the earlier questions that I already answered, but I'm going to go ahead and give every individual my full attention. So the choices that I had to make in order to change was I had to be very deliberate, right? You have to begin by defining success. What is the best possible outcome for you? I don't mean the best outcome that you want. I know that you want to get out of prison today. You want to begin building your life. You want to go home with your family. You want all of these things today, but that may not be possible for some of you. It certainly wasn't possible for me when I had to go through 9,500 days in prison, but I knew that what success was going to look like. I went into the prison system when I was 23. I knew that I was going to get out when I was 49, and I knew that when I came out, I wanted to be able to function in society, have nobody prejudge me for the bad decisions I made as a kid, and I wanted to create opportunities. I wanted to build credit. I wanted to build businesses. So because I knew how I could define success, I knew what kinds of decisions I had to make while I was in prison. That meant, what books am I going to read? That meant, how much time am I going to invest in learning how to write coherently? That meant, who am I going to associate with inside of the prison? Anybody who was engaged in disruptive behavior, I knew that I had to stay away from, because those people could only draw me back into bigger struggle. So I didn't want to have more struggle. I already got sentenced to 45 years in prison. It was time for me to build a pathway to success. So I would say that, there's an old cliche that some of you may have heard. It is, when is the best time to plant an oak tree? And the best time to plant an oak tree, some may say winter, spring, summer, fall, but the reality is that the best time to plant an oak tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant an oak tree is today. So I found that I had to start changing immediately with regard to the people I associated with, the books that I read, the efforts that I made, the investment I made to educate myself so that I could become more successful. And I would recommend that you do the same thing. So the next question I received was, what kind of sacrifices did I have to make in order to become successful, both in and out of prison? Well, for me, I did not consider them a sacrifice because I knew how I wanted to come out of prison, but this is what I really had to do. I had to be very deliberate with regard to where I would position myself in the prison. And from my perspective, there were two very important components of successfully navigating a prison journey. It didn't matter whether I was in a high security federal prison, where I was for the first 8 years of my journey, a medium security federal prison, a low security federal prison, or a minimum security camp. It didn't matter what level I was in. I always had to position myself by getting myself into the right job, really. Right? I needed to make sure that I was in a job that would allow me to focus on the successful person that I wanted to become. I needed to read, I needed to write, I needed to participate in educating myself in a very active way. And so a job had a huge role in doing that. And so I always look for leaders like Mr. Calvin Noel, a person who really makes a commitment to try and help people grow. I wanted to be around people like, Jeremy Nichols, who is very vested in helping the correctional system, graduate more people and have people come back successfully. And so I would strive to be a clerk with somebody like that, because I knew that when I was at work, when I was at a clerk, I wasn't really engaged in the prison politics. And the second component that I had to choose very deliberately was where I was going to sleep. And that wasn't always easy, but I found that if I navigated my way around, I could find my way to get into the right cell situation. And again, my whole focus was to avoid complexities of prison and to just always be focusing on getting through the prison journey without having any more problems, because any problem I had in prison could have a ripple effect. It could influence whether I could participate or complete an educational program. It could influence whether a mentor was going to stay and help me, or whether he was going to say, oh, there's just another prisoner who is making bad decisions and then doesn't want to invest in me anymore. So it was very important for me to stay focused every day, to be mindful of the opportunities that were around me, to make sure that I was physically fit, because I thought that would be really important all the way through the journey, and to just always be thinking about what can I learn. But that wasn't a sacrifice. That was the game, and I loved the game. I loved to be in struggle and find a way to make it through, and that's what I would suggest that you've got to do. You got to love the game of preparing for success. Because if you don't, it's just too hard, right? It's too hard to be waiting for success 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, in my case, 26 years into the future. So you have to love the process of developing skills and becoming something more in the future than you are today. And for me, it was always a process. Even today, it's still a process. I've been out of jail for a little over 5 years. Now I have a business out here. I've got a lot of assets for which I am responsible to investors. I'm responsible to build a higher return, to grow. I'm going to strive to show some pictures in the background here when I'm editing this video so that you can see, because it was something I couldn't see while I was in prison. I didn't know how the internet worked, right? The internet didn't exist when I went into the system. But I want to show you how I made decisions while I was in prison. It put me on a pathway to success during my first 5 years, and I am now using that same pattern to become successful out here, and is what I would suggest that you do as well. And you can see I am totally transparent. I publish these videos, not only send into prisons, but I also bring them out. I also publish them on my YouTube page so that my clients and my business people, the people who do business with me, can also see. Because if they can see, they too are going to believe in me and recognize that I'm always striving to help people in struggle become successful. And that's absolutely what I want for you. But I wouldn't look at it as a sacrifice. I would look at it as an investment in yourself. Always be investing in yourself, because nobody can do it but you. So that leads me to question number 5, and that's keeping a that I don't know who it came from, but here was the question. Keeping a positive attitude is key to being successful and building a strong support system. And then he asks, what were your key motivators in keeping a positive attitude? Well, I knew that I wanted to come back to society, and I didn't want to have problems. I didn't want to have challenges with the criminal justice system ever again. It ripped away 26 years of me living in society, and I had to live in prison. I learned to live in prison, but every day that I was in prison, I was thinking about how am I going to come home? And that is really what kept me motivated while I was inside. And to be motivated, I kind of came up with this strategy that you may have seen if you've read any of my books, or if you've looked at any of my other videos, which I know are available in prisons across the state of California and across the United States. It is that you've got to visualize success, the best possible outcome. I wanted so badly to come back to society successfully that every single thought in my head was consistent with that. Every single word that came out of my mouth was consistent with becoming successful. Every single action I participated in prison was predicated on, is this going to expose me to volatility, to problems with other people? I never played organized sports when I was in prison because I knew that I could control my own behavior, but I couldn't control the behavior of the people around me. So I would just avoid that. I stayed physically fit by doing, thousands of push-ups or training with weights during the first decade of my journey until weights were taken away. I ran countless marathons while I was in there. Anything that would help me build a strong mindset, that was what I was on. So it was visualize success, put a plan in place. How many books am I going to read every year, right? How am I going to document the books that I read? It is putting priorities in place and then executing this plan every single day. Even if those days are going to go and turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, years turn into decades, I had a plan, and that is what kept my attitude strong. Whether they locked me in segregated housing for something or other, whether I was being transferred away, I always had an attitude and confidence that I was going to be able to navigate this journey just like you can navigate this journey. But it all starts with mindset, and that mindset has to focus on the best possible outcome. So that leads me to the 6th question, and it's what inspired you to transform your life, or what sparked your will to change? And Mr. Villasenor, I want to thank you for asking me that question, but I can tell you, it was you, Mr. Villasenor, who inspired me to transform my life. And that might sound crazy to you, but that's the truth. I was lying inside of a jail cell, inside of the Pierce County Jail, facing a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. I hadn't been sentenced yet. I didn't know what kind of time frame I was going to get. But I'd read these stories of leaders who had become successful, and they're the ones who taught me how to change my mindset. They taught me that the world isn't really so much about my life, but it's about what can I do with the resources that I have around me to contribute and add value to the life of other people. So I knew where I was, right? I was in prison. I was facing life without parole. I didn't know what sentence I was going to get, but I knew also that it didn't really matter what happened to me. What really mattered was how am I going to have a role or relationship in the people that I'm going to meet in the future? How can I add value to their life? How can I teach them? How can I inspire them? How can I have people see me not for the bad decisions that I made that brought me into the prison system, but rather inspire other people who are going through struggle or who want to achieve a higher potential? What can I do to help them feel as if they want to be a part of my community, or they want me to be a part of their community? That was what inspired me to transform my life. And so since I knew how I wanted to come out, every decision I made inside was going to lead me closer to that objective of becoming successful, of striving to connect with my community. I'm just so grateful to the leadership at CDCR. And that might seem crazy that a guy like me who was in prison for 26 years is grateful to a prison system. But it takes a lot of courage for leaders of prisons to allow me to come in and connect with people in prison. But at the same time, I feel extremely passionately and very strongly that people in prison will respond to a message that comes from somebody who served time in prison. So I'm really grateful to all of the leadership at CDCR and to leadership in prisons across the country. I've been in prisons from as far away as New York to the Guam and Saipan in the Micronesia area of the Pacific, California prisons, Washington State prisons, Federal Bureau of Prisons, many prisons. And it's always a leader that allows me to come in there. And that takes a lot of courage. And I'm always striving to prove worthy of those people who believed in me. But I'm especially grateful to people like you, Mr. Villaseñor, who really even shown an interest in it. And I'm hoping that this message I am providing is giving you the hope that you too can build a life of success and meaning and relevance. And I'm sure that you're doing that. I just want to thank you for letting me play this small role in sharing what worked for me. And so that leads me to question 7, and it comes from Mr. L. Chavez. So Mr. Chavez, thank you for asking. You wrote that you're not a citizen of the United States, but you wanted to better yourself through college, even if they won't accept you. And you asked me, what can you do towards that? What advice can I provide? If you really want to change your life and educate yourself, but you don't have financial means in prison. Mr. Chavez, I can completely relate to you, but I can assure you that if you work hard, you can find somebody who will give you that shot. I didn't have any money, and I was in prison for with a 45-year sentence. If I didn't get in trouble, I could finish it in 26 years under the law that I was convicted in. I was convicted under a law that provided good time, so I could conclude that sentence in 26 years. But I started at the very beginning, and so I didn't know how I was going to get into college, but one thing that I had is a 100% commitment. So what I started to do is I would just write letters to schools. And I introduced myself. I didn't even know who they were going to. I just wrote to admissions director at, Loma Linda College or, this college or that college. And I sent them all over the country, hundreds of letters, just sending a letter, just basically saying something like this. My name is Michael Santos. I made some really bad decisions as a young man. I sold cocaine. I was later arrested and I was convicted and sentenced to 45 years in prison. But I really want to work hard to reconcile with society and become a good citizen. And I'm hoping that I can get an education so that I can start building my life and that when I come back to society, I can live as a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen. But I don't have any money and I can't show up on campus. But if you allow me to go to school, I will work hard and I just want to earn a degree because I think that will help me. And I think it will help me transition into society and get a job and become something that is not, recycled back into the prison system. And you send one letter out, you probably don't get a response. You send 10 letters out, you probably don't get a response. But if you send 100 letters or 200 letters, you really increase the chances of getting a response. And that's what worked for me. That's how I got into college. I think that you can do the same thing. As many of you know, our nation incarcerates more people per capita than any other nation on earth. And there are a lot of people who are sympathetic and want to help. But nobody is going to help you if you don't help yourself. So I would really encourage you, pick up a pen and a piece of paper and start writing to colleges. But even if you don't get into college, you can start working to educate yourself. I learned everything on my own just by reading and writing. I never had the opportunity to sit with university professors like a regular college student, but I knew I wanted to learn, and so I just kept working. And I know that if you have access to this coursework, you also have access to teachers who care about you, and I hope that you will take advantage of them and ask them to recommend books, ask them to help steer you on the right path, and you can educate yourself. As you likely know, some of the most successful people in the world never got a college degree. Who does that include? That includes Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, Michael Dell, the founder of Dell Computers. Granted, these are really smart people, but you don't have to get a college education to become educated. You can educate yourself, and I would encourage you to start doing that today. Now I'm going to go to question number 8, which comes from Mr. James Gay. And James, I really want to thank you for asking the question. This is, you asked me, is this the end plan, or do you see yourself doing something different later in life? Well, I am incredibly grateful for what I am doing right now. My main career is raising capital, raising money from investors, and using that money to deploy in investments, real estate primarily. I started by raising money to build my own real estate portfolio here in the state of California. Because that portfolio did really well, I was more successful in raising additional money because I could get people to believe in me. And then I started to invest overseas. And right now I'm focusing in the country of Belize and Costa Rica. And I'm now selling my own property in those countries to other potential investors who want to get in on no money down deals and transactions. And I document the journey. When you ask if this is the end game, my end game is to always strive to be useful and to create value and to use technology that will help me scale and inspire and teach more people. So yes, this is exactly what I would like to be doing for the rest of my life. I think it's really important to always be useful, and I just want to share the strategies that are working for me, share them with as many people as possible, with hopes that they can use those same strategies to achieve higher levels of performance in their life. And that includes you, James. I'm hoping that you can learn how to make more strategic, deliberate decisions every day. I'm always learning. You really never, achieve the end game. You just go on a process that is going to lead you to higher levels of success. And I want to continue doing that for the rest of my life. I'm very grateful for the blessings that come my way, but I always also sense a duty and a responsibility to teach others, and I will do so through these videos and my podcast and my books that I write and courses that I create, and just share as much as I possibly can. So I hope that you find value in it, James. And thank you for asking the question. And finally, I'm in the last question. It's question number 9, and it comes from Mr. Dwayne Wentz. And I'm just going to read what it said, what I received. It says, I'm doing a 14-year bid, almost the same as you. I did 45 years, James, Dwayne, and I served 26 years. So, 14 years I don't want to minimize. It is a long time, but it's not the same as doing 26 years. You asked what made you want to better, your question is, what made you want to better yourself? I want to change myself, but sometimes it's hard to focus. How can you help me? What's your advice? Dwayne, that's a great question. And I definitely want to respect the 14-year sentence that you're serving, if that's accurate. Maybe it was transposed and you're serving 41 years. I don't know. But I know that whether it's 14 or 41 or 3 or 30, any time that you are away from the people that you love and the people who love you, that's an eternity. And I get it. It is not easy. But it was thinking about those people, that's what inspired me to want to change myself. I wanted to come back to society and just be a normal person. I didn't want people to always see me for the bad decisions that I made when I was 20 that brought me into the prison system. And I wanted it so badly that I was willing to invest every day, 7 days a week, 30, however many days there were in the month, 30 or 31, every day I wanted to prepare for success because I knew it wasn't going to be easy. If I didn't learn new skills, if I didn't develop communication skills, if I didn't learn how to read, write, communicate, it would be hard. But I knew that it was never an end game. Even though I may earn a college degree or complete a course, I would always have to learn more. And it didn't change. When I came back to society, I'm still having to learn and grow. But what really keeps me focused is the end game. While I was in prison, I knew how I wanted to get out. Once I got out, I knew that I had to stay on it. And so when you ask how I can help you, the reality is I am one person, right? I'm one person. I don't have a team. I don't have a staff. I'm filming this video on my own time. I'm going to edit it. It's going to take me several hours. but I do it because I definitely want to help you, because it's the only way I can help the thousands and tens of thousands of people who reach out to me. I want to teach at scale because I didn't have that when I was in prison. I didn't have this message of what does it look like? What is the reason that I want to invest myself every single day? So my advice is to think about how you want to come out. Think about the challenges that you're going to have, and think about how you ask questions. You ask a question, how can I help you? But I would reverse that, Dwayne, and I would say, how can you help me change the system? You can help me change the system by making a commitment to succeed. Talk to your teachers and talk about what you want to learn, and then they will feed that information to me, and I can take it out here to leaders in the legislature and tell them about you, Dwayne Wintz, and about the thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who are in prison that need access to resources. I can't work with anybody one-on-one because I just don't have the bandwidth. I've got responsibilities out here, just like you have responsibilities in there. But I know that you don't see so easily while you're in prison because you're cut off. Fortunately, I'm able to create these videos, and I want to show you what's working for me. And I can absolutely say I never asked anybody to do anything that I didn't do while I was in prison and that I am not still doing today. And I live in a complete state of gratitude now. I lived in a state of gratitude when I was going through 26 years in prison. And I just want to close this by saying I'm enormously grateful to the California Department of Corrections for having the courage to allow me to come in there. I definitely want to thank Mr. Noel and Mr. Nichols, because they're really the leaders of allowing me to get into the Centinela State Prison, even if I can only come in through these DVD videos. So my name is Michael Santos. I'm really grateful to you for giving me your time. When you get out, I hope that you will visit michaelsantos.com, and you will see I'm 100% transparent. Even though I'm in the real estate business, in the development business, I'm always showing other people how I use strategies and tactics to prepare for success. I never hide from the bad decisions that I made as a young man. Instead, I just show people, hey, these were the ways that I got through. And even though you may be locked in a prison right now, I can assure you there are many people out here in society that need these same lessons. And that's why I create this content. So Dwayne and all of the others who asked me these questions, I encourage you to ask more questions. I will do my best to create these videos and send them in and share the insights that I have. Thanks so much for giving me your time.